The first-class cabin was supposed to be a calm oasis, but when Karen started screaming bloody murder, all hell broke loose. She was on a collision course with the one passenger who refused to back down. A woman with a plan, nerves of steel, and the perfect response when privilege met reality. Susan breathed a sigh of relief as she settled into the plush, leather seat of the first-class cabin. After a grueling business trip, she was finally on her way home. The monotony of economy class was behind her, and she intended to enjoy every minute of the upgraded experience. As the cabin filled up, Susan watched the parade of passengers filing past. Most were professional types, like herself, eager to start their journey in comfort. But then a commotion near the front caught her eye. A woman, her face beet red with fury, was loudly berating the flight attendant. "This is absolutely unacceptable. I demand to be seated in first class immediately," she screeched. The attendant, a seasoned pro, remained calm. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, ma'am. Your ticket is for economy class. I'd be happy to assist you in finding your assigned seat." "Do you have any idea who I am?" The woman spat. "I'm Karen Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Enterprises. I deserve to be up here with the rest of the elite, not slumming it with the commoners." Susan rolled her eyes. "Oh great, one of those." Karen turned her attention to the passengers, her eyes landing on Susan. "You, get up and give me your seat. Now." Susan stared at her, dumbfounded. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Karen growled. "I'm a busy, important woman, and I need the seat more than you do. So move it." Susan sat up straighter, her spine stiffening. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen. This is my seat, and I have no intention of giving it up." Karen's face twisted in rage. "Do you have any idea who I am? I could have you fired, blacklisted, or even arrested for this." Susan chuckled coolly. "I'm well aware of who you are, Karen Whitaker, but I don't respond well to threats or bullying. This seat is mine, and I'm not moving." The tension in the cabin was palpable as the two women stared each other down. The other passengers watched, transfixed, unsure of how the confrontation would unfold. Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Listen, you insignificant little worm," Karen hissed, her eyes narrowing to slits. "I don't have time for your insolence. This seat is mine, and you will give it to me. Now." Susan's lips curled into a sardonic smile. "Or what? You'll have me arrested. Good luck with that. I paid for this seat fair and square, and I'm not moving an inch." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of puce. "How dare you defy me? Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes, I do," Susan replied evenly. "You're an entitled bully who's used to getting her way. But not today, Karen. Today, you're going to learn that your status and money don't automatically entitle you to trample all over everyone else." The other passengers watched the exchange with bated breath, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen let out a frustrated scream, drawing the attention of the flight attendant. "Excuse me, ma'am, is there a problem?" The attendant asked, her tone polite but firm. "Yes, there is a problem," Karen shrieked. "This woman is refusing to give me her seat, and I demand that you make her move." The attendant turned to Susan, who simply shook her head. "I'm afraid I can't do that, ma'am. This is her assigned seat, and she has every right to occupy it." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're taking her side? Don't you know who I am?" The attendant sighed. "I'm well aware of who you are, Ms. Whitaker. But that doesn't change the fact that this seat is already occupied. I'm afraid I can't force the passenger to give it up." Karen's face contorted with rage. "This is an outrage. I'll have your job for this." Susan leaned back in her seat, a smug expression on her face. "Good luck with that, Karen. In the meantime, I suggest you find your own seat and try to relax. The flight's going to be a long one. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red as she glared at Susan. The other passengers watched in stunned silence, wondering how far the confrontation would escalate. "This is unacceptable," Karen bellowed, her voice carrying through the cabin. "I demand to speak to the captain immediately." The flight attendant raised a hand, her expression calm but firm. "I'm afraid that won't be necessary, ma'am. The captain has been informed of the situation, and he's standing by his crew's decision. Your seat is in economy class, and that's where you'll need to remain for the duration of the flight." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent with this airline? I deserve to be treated with respect." Susan suppressed a smirk. "It seems your money and status aren't buying you any special treatment today, Karen. Maybe you should try a little humility for a change." Karen whirled on Susan, her finger jabbing the air in front of her face. You're going to regret this. I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Susan leaned back in her seat, unfazed. "Go ahead and try, but I think you'll find that your threats and bullying don't carry much weight here. The rules apply to everyone, even entitled CEOs like yourself." The flight attendant stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your assigned seat in economy class. If you continue to disrupt the flight, I'll have no choice but to call the authorities." Karen glared at the attendant, her chest heaving with rage. For a moment, it seemed like she might explode. But then, something in her demeanor shifted. Her shoulders slumped, and a look of defeat crossed her face. "Fine," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll go." Without another word, she turned and stalked toward the back of the plane, the other passengers parting like the Red Sea before her. Susan watched her go, a sense of triumph welling up inside her. "That's right, Karen. Today, your privilege and entitlement don't mean a damn thing. Welcome to the real world." As the plane taxied down the runway, Susan couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had stood her ground against a bully, and she had won. It was a small victory, but one that felt particularly sweet. The rest of the flight passed without incident, save for the occasional glance or whisper from the other passengers as they eyed Karen sulking in her economy class seat. Susan, on the other hand, was the picture of calm and composure, sipping her complimentary champagne and flipping through a magazine. As the plane touched down at the destination airport, Susan waited patiently for the cabin to clear before gathering her belongings and making her way to the jetway. She had a feeling Karen would be waiting for her, and she wanted to be prepared. Sure enough, as soon as Susan stepped into the terminal, she spotted Karen standing to the side, her arms crossed over her chest and her expression one of pure venom. Well, if it isn't the great Susan Weston," Karen sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "I hope you enjoyed your little victory up there, because it's about to come crashing down around you." Susan arched an eyebrow, unfazed by Karen's theatrics. "And what exactly do you plan to do, Karen? File a complaint with the airline? Good luck with that. They've already made it clear that they're siding with me on this one." Karen's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Oh no, my dear Susan. I have something much more personal in mind." Susan felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to show any outward sign of discomfort. "Whatever it is you're planning, save it. I'm not intimidated by your empty threats." "Empty threats? Ha!" Karen chuckled. "We'll see about that." She turned and strode away, her high heels clicking on the tile floor. Susan watched her go, a nagging sense of unease settling in the pit of her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was up to something, and that it wasn't going to be good. As she made her way to the baggage claim, Susan's mind raced with possibilities. What could Karen be planning? A smear campaign? Trying to get me fired? Or worse? She shuddered at the thought, her grip tightening on the handle of her suitcase. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. Glancing down, she felt her heart skip a beat. It was an email from her boss, with the subject line, "Urgent. Call me immediately." Susan's stomach twisted into knots as she opened the message, her mind reeling with possibilities. This can't be good. Susan's hands trembled as she pressed the call button, her heart racing. What could her boss possibly want to talk to her about so urgently? The ominous email from Karen had already put her on edge, and now this. The line clicked, and her boss's voice came through, terse and serious. "Susan, I need you to come to the office as soon as possible. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." A situation? Susan's voice was shaky, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What kind of situation? "It's complicated," her boss replied, hesitating. "I'd rather not discuss the details over the phone. Just get here as soon as you can. Okay. Okay, I'm on my way." Susan ended the call, her mind reeling. Whatever was going on, it couldn't be good. She steeled herself, taking a deep breath, and hurried to the nearest taxi stand. The drive to the office felt interminable, and Susan's anxiety only grew with each passing minute. By the time she burst through the door, her boss was waiting for her, a grim expression on his face. "What's going on?" Susan demanded, her voice tinged with fear. "Is this about Karen Whitaker?" Her boss nodded, his brow furrowed. "I'm afraid so. It seems she's filed a complaint against you, alleging that you assaulted her on the flight." Susan's jaw dropped. "What? That's ridiculous. I didn't lay a finger on her." I know, her boss said, raising a hand. "But she's made quite a stink, and the higher-ups are taking it seriously. They're demanding a meeting with you to discuss the matter." Susan felt her stomach drop. This was exactly the kind of retaliation she had feared from Karen. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice small. "For now, they just want to hear your side of the story," her boss replied. "But you need to be prepared, Susan. Karen is pulling out all the stops, and she's got a lot of influence. We need to be ready to fight this tooth and nail." Susan nodded, her mind racing. "Okay, let's do it. I'm not going down without a fight." Her boss gave her a sympathetic look. "I know this is a mess, Susan, but I believe in you. Just tell the truth, and we'll get through this together." Susan took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. "Bring it on, Karen. I'm not going down without a fight." The conference room was tense and oppressive, the air thick with the weight of Karen's accusations. Susan sat across the table from the panel of executives, her back straight and her gaze unwavering. "Ms. Weston," the lead executive began, his voice stern, "we've received a very serious complaint from Ms. Whitaker, alleging that you assaulted her on the flight earlier today. Can you please explain your side of the story?" Susan took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. "I can assure you, there was no assault. Ms. Whitaker became agitated when I refused to give up my rightfully purchased first-class seat to her. She started yelling and threatening me, but I never once laid a hand on her." The executives exchanged a glance, their expressions skeptical. "And yet, Ms. Whitaker has provided us with photographs and witness statements that seem to contradict your version of events." Susan felt a surge of panic, but she refused to let it show. "I'm afraid those statements and photographs are nothing more than fabrications. Ms. Whitaker is a powerful and influential woman, and she's clearly using that to her advantage to try and smear me." The lead executive leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Be that as it may, we take these allegations very seriously. Ms. Whitaker is a valued client, and her word carries a great deal of weight." Susan's heart raced, but she steeled her resolve. "I understand that, but I'm telling you the truth. Ms. Whitaker is the one who is lying, not me. I've been nothing but a dedicated and loyal employee, and I refuse to be punished for standing up to her bullying tactics." The executives exchanged another glance, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the lead executive spoke again. "Ms. Weston, while we appreciate your candor, the fact remains that we have a credible complaint against you. We have no choice but to suspend you pending further investigation. Susan felt her stomach drop. Suspend me? But I haven't done anything wrong. The executive raised a hand. I'm sorry, but our hands are tied. We have to take this seriously, and that means removing you from your position until we can determine the truth of the matter. Susan could feel the panic rising in her chest, but she refused to let it show. This is outrageous. You're letting a powerful bully intimidate you into railroading an innocent employee. I won't stand for it. The executive's expression hardened. This discussion is over, Ms. Weston. You're suspended, effective immediately. Please gather your belongings and leave the premises. As Susan was escorted out of the building, a single defiant tear rolled down her cheek. Karen, you may have won this round, but I'm not going down without a fight. Susan's mind raced as she made her way home, her thoughts a whirlwind of anger, frustration, and disbelief. How could this be happening? She had done nothing wrong, and yet Karen's manipulations had cost her everything. Once inside her apartment, Susan sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. She had to find a way to fight this, to clear her name and expose Karen's lies. But where would she even begin? Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from her former boss, and her heart leaped with a glimmer of hope. Susan, I'm so sorry about what happened. I know you're innocent, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help you. Meet me at the cafe down the street in an hour. We need to talk. Susan felt a wave of relief wash over her. At least she had one ally in this mess. Quickly gathering her things, she headed out the door, determined to get to the bottom of this. When she arrived at the cafe, her former boss was already waiting, his expression grave. Thank you for coming, he said, gesturing for her to take a seat. I've been doing some digging, and I'm afraid the situation is even worse than we thought. Susan's stomach tightened. What do you mean? Her boss sighed heavily. It seems Karen has been using her connections to put pressure on the executives. They're terrified of crossing her, and they're willing to throw you under the bus to save their own skins. Susan felt a surge of anger. So they're just going to let her get away with this? Not if I can help it, her boss replied firmly. I've been secretly gathering evidence that points to Karen's lies, but I'm going to need your help to bring her down. Susan's eyes widened. What do you have in mind? Her boss leaned in, a determined glint in his eye. We're going to set a trap for Karen. Something that will expose her for the vindictive, manipulative liar that she is. But it's going to be risky, and it's going to take all of our resources to pull it off. Susan didn't hesitate. I'm in. Whatever it takes, I'm not going to let Karen win. Her boss nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Let's get to work. The plan was risky, but Susan knew it was their only chance to bring Karen down. With her former boss's guidance, she set the trap, carefully laying the groundwork to expose Karen's lies. The critical moment came during a tense meeting with the executives, where Susan and her boss presented their evidence. Karen, confident in her power, had waltzed in, expecting an easy victory. But as the meeting progressed, the tide began to turn. Susan's former boss methodically laid out the damning evidence, piece by piece: surveillance footage, phone records, and witness statements that directly contradicted Karen's version of events. Karen's face slowly contorted with rage as the truth unraveled. She tried to interrupt, to shout down the evidence, but the executives silenced her, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to outrage. This is an outrage, Karen screeched, her voice shrill and panicked. I won't stand for this. I'm afraid you don't have a choice, Ms. Whitaker, one of the executives replied sternly. The evidence is clear. You have falsely accused an innocent employee, and you've used your influence to try and cover it up. That is unacceptable. Karen's eyes widened in horror as the full weight of her actions sank in. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, her usual bravado and entitlement now replaced by sheer terror. As of this moment, Ms. Whitaker, your company's contract with us is terminated. The executive continued, his voice resolute. And we'll be forwarding this evidence to the appropriate authorities. You can expect to hear from them soon. Karen's face drained of color, and she stumbled back, her hands trembling. You can't do this. I'll ruin you all. But her threats fell on deaf ears as the executive stood firm, unmoved by her desperate pleas. Susan watched the scene unfold, a sense of justice and vindication washing over her. Karen Whitaker, the untouchable CEO, had finally been brought to her knees, her privilege and power stripped away. As Karen was escorted from the room, Susan couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. But that feeling was quickly overshadowed by the knowledge that she had stood her ground, fought back, and won. She turned to her former boss, a grateful smile on her face. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I couldn't have done this without you. Her boss smiled back, a glint of triumph in his eyes. That's what friends are for. Now let's go get your job back. As they walked out of the building, Susan felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Karen's reign of terror was over, and she had emerged victorious. It was a small victory, but one that tasted all the sweeter for the struggle.